A hydra has been terrorizing the countryside. A hero is chosen and a journey begins. The hero tracks the beast to a local cavern and discovers it is picking clean a corpse from a nearby village. Enraged, she lunges into battle. Blood, sweat, and screams fill the cavern as both parties furiously lash out against the other. Then, after many hours, the beast makes a mistake. She is victorious, and its head is hers. However, she is shocked to find that after decapitating the beast, the two heads that grew back were much smaller and less aggressive. A few minutes later, there were 4 heads, also smaller and less aggressive. This is when our hero realized she isn't in an ancient legend, but in a Netflix original that doesn't know how to end a good story.
Which Netflix original would that be?
Both animated features that I have latched onto and burned out on angrily.
What are their titles?
Voltron, and I'm worried that Castlevania will take that same path.
So both of these shows will literally end with a Hydra becoming less aggressive?
No. So the Hydra is a metaphor for you have this
story branches?
No. So you got this main villain.
Yeah.
And the entire show pushes forth to kill that main villain.
Mm-hmm.
And then they kill the villain that's terrorizing the multiverse or whatever. And then they realize that after this flawless ending, there's 2 more lesser villains that were tied into the main villain off beating up somebody in an alleyway. And then they stop those 2 villains, and then 4 villains, or even lesser, are doing something even more petty, and they just drag the show on until you don't care anymore. And it's frustrating.
That sounds pretty frustrating. I stopped watching Voltron after season 1. It could not hold my interest. It was trying too hard to be The Last Airbender in space, I felt like.
Yeah. Well, The Last Airbender did a good job because it went from point A to point B.
Mm-hmm.
Voltron
and because you could say early on, I think, no, actually, all throughout the series, we're going to talk about story arcs. Mm-hmm. And The Last Airbender is a great example of that because it's got an overarching story, and yet every episode is a concise story in and of itself, and mm-hmm. it doesn't compromise on either of those things.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was, it established the antagonist, you set out on the journey, and then at the end, spoiler alert, they kill the antagonist. No, they didn't kill the antagonist. They stripped him of his powers.
Yeah. And
I like that. To me, that feels like a wrapped up in a bow type thing, and I feel satisfied,
Yeah, absolutely.
Imagine if at the end of Avatar, you realize that there's more seasons of lesser villains, and...
Well, Zed, have I got news for you? It's called The Legend of Korra.
It's frustrating,
Yeah.
So, now that rant's out of the way, and because you didn't watch Castlevania, I can't talk
I'm sorry.
about it.
I'm so sorry. I'm going to. I had a busy week. I'll take your word that it's good.
Yeah, it's really good.
And I told you, before we started recording that you could still talk about it, but apparently it's so good that he doesn't want to spoil me on it. So
I don't. It's got the shrinking Hydra problem. At least it might, and I hope it doesn't. I really, really hope it doesn't. But it looks like it's going in that direction.
That would be unfortuitous.
That would just suck ass.
Well, I'll still give it a chance since it hasn't gone in that direction yet, apparently. But
yeah,
kind of doesn't bode well for me going into it.
Well, the way they did it is that if you do sit through the first 2 seasons, it satisfies you just enough to not watch anything beyond that.
Okay. So that might end up being what I do when I hear the news of season 3.
What happened? It felt like you had sort of the writers had a vision,
mm-hmm.
and then corporate was like, "Hey, we need to push this further," and then
that's how it always fucking goes, dude.
And then they told their original story, but found a way to push it forward without compromising the original story.
Mm-hmm.
which is why I think I may skip out on season 3, because season 1 and 2 almost ended perfectly.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
That they provided a stopping point for people who don't want to ruin their lives.
Absolutely. So, you're a writer. How do you
I am.
How do you go about crafting stories?
Oh,
like, what
God.
is your process? Like, how do you...
I wish I could tell you.
You don't have a process? You don't
I have
map
a
it
process,
out?
but it's very chaotic. And,
No, let's hear it. Let's swap notes.
it's all about like putting the pieces together. You know, my creative process. A metaphor I would have for it is, I don't know. It's a puzzle, okay? Somebody dumps the puzzle pieces out on the table, and the big ones stay on the table, and the smaller ones go flying all around the room and get, like under the cupboards and stuff, and I have to find them. And so the way I usually start a story is I've got a general idea of what I want to communicate in that story. Some stories like are built with I want to communicate an idea.
Yes.
Sometimes they're just I had an idea for a cool character that I would like to see do something.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes they're that I had an idea for a world that I want to see somebody do something in. And a lot of times I'll put those ideas together as they come to me, but it's the big parts come to me first, and then I write those down, and I'm like, these need spaces in between them, things happening.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I don't know if I have any stories I can really talk about too much.
Well,
To give examples of.
swap around nouns and create something so generic that nobody will know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I guess I could just make one up that's similar to something. Real quick. Okay, so give me a name for our hero of this theoretical story.
Michael.
So Michael, I have an idea of Michael, and Michael's a cool guy, right? And
Yeah.
Michael's a sword boy, and he's real good at fighting, and he's gonna kill the emperor. And that's all I know. I know who my main character is. I know what he is, what he does, and where I want him to end up. And then it's like padding in how to get there. It's like I've got to build the road to that eventuality and somehow make it make sense, and find ways to branch off and like explore other things along the way, but always come back to it. So I think you should start a story by writing your ending.
Really?
Or outlining. Yeah. You've got to know where you're going.
Well, yeah, I mean, but like just starting out by writing the ending itself. Or
I think the
down...
ending is like one of the very first things you should decide on.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to be the very first thing. You need your initial idea about like what the story's going to be about, and then before, like when you sit down to outline, write the beginning, and write the ending.
Yes.
And then fill in the spaces in between.
Mm-hmm.
Because there are so many terrible stories that are just built to run forever.
Yeah.
Just start. Somebody has an idea, doesn't work on padding it out. They just jump right into it, and they're like, "Oh, stream of consciousness. I'm gonna just take it somewhere," and it ends up being dog shit in my opinion most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Because of course it will. You've got no direction.
Yeah.
Which is the way a lot of like Japanese manga go, like because manga are made to run forever without ever ending most of the time.
I hear One Piece does well.
One Piece, I was about to bring up, circumvents this because it does have its ending in mind.
Mm-hmm.
And it tells you that from the beginning. You get this main character. Some shonen manga, take this and make it work because they've got protagonists with very clear ideals. So One Piece works well because Luffy shows up in like the first chapter and he's like, "My name is Luffy. I'm gonna become king of the pirates." And you're like, okay, that's where the story is gonna end up. So it's you know that the creator has an idea of like where it's gonna end. It's just like how long he's gonna let it run before he gets there. I think I saw in an interview, Eijiro Oda is the name of the creator of One Piece, and it was like, yeah, he said like, they interview a lot of mangaka, and they're like, I have no idea what the fuck I'm doing, and they interviewed this guy, and he's like, yeah, I knew all along how I wanted to end One Piece, and I had no idea it would take me this long to get there. Yeah.
I had watched a video recently about One Piece from a fan's perspective, and he talked about by creating like this world at sea with all these different islands to find and explore, you create infinite possibilities of fresh ideas.
Like the Earth of One Piece is like several times bigger than the real world, so it's there's. And I've seen people like charting out the world like online, like as a world building project, like as new islands are discovered, and it's actually a very interesting world building going on there.
I respect the show. I'm just never going to get into it.
They say the manga is better. Like that's the best way to take in One Piece.
Fair enough.
And actually, I know a podcast that reviews chapters weekly as they come out.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's called the Podcast.
Podcast. Fair enough. So, I was shocked to find that your creative process is a lot less
structured.
Than mine.
Because I'm the structure guy to you, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is odd, but because just the beginning is unstructured, and then I get the rest of it is striving to create structure. So I wouldn't say it's unstructural.
Yeah.
So is yours more structural in that case?
Yes, but I think it's a product of my genre. I write pulpy horror.
Yeah.
Like really pulpy horror. So, what I do is, like, I have one right here. I start with, on Notepad, and I do a brainstorm sheet.
Okay.
And I just do a complete, just brain dump of everything I could come up with, and just let it lead me down whatever path I can let it lead me down until I have a general idea.
Yeah.
Then I get up, I think on it, I brainstorm it more, I solidify it, and then come back, finish the brainstorm sheet, and then work on the plot points. I can't even remember the word for it. The diagram? No, that's not it. Outline. I sit down and write an outline.
The diagram. You can call it a diagram if you want to.
Yeah, it was close. And then I do an outline. And then from there, I just let the outline be the backbone as I write.
Okay.
So I already know what's going to happen, when it's going to happen. I have, let's say it's a creature story. I've got my creatures already written up in the notepad for the brainstorm sheet. I got my trash OC put together.
Yeah.
It's already there. And like, if I have to develop more OCs as I go, I just put them on the spot, build them on the spot, and let them be more freeform because they're not as important as the main protagonist and main antagonist. Yeah. Whether it's human or other. And that's my process. That's how I did Bulletproof, The Strange Case of Elizabeth Fisher, and a bunch of crap you've not read.
It's not a bad one. Yeah, I usually don't have brainstorming sessions. I just let my life be brainstorming session, and I let things come to me. Because it's like when I've been working on a story, it will kind of always be in the back of my mind as I'm going about my daily life.
Yeah.
And so I'll give you an example from today. So I've got a story that I've mostly put together. It's the first book in the series that you know all about.
Yes.
And obviously there are only a few blank pieces left. And one of them is like how my main party is going to like just the details surrounding the circumstances in which they meet another character.
Yeah.
And so I was down at that liquor store. I stopped in it on my way home today, and that's why I got home so late, because I stopped there because they have a big home brewing section, which is something I'm thinking about getting into, is making homemade wines and stuff. And I was sitting there looking at all those, brewing and distilling supplies, and I was like, oh, that character is going to work like at a meadery or a vineyard, and I'm going to use the knowledge I learn here to, detail that.
Mm-hmm.
And just like things like that, just like what I see, I just let things kind of come to me for the most part, and then I put them where they would be most efficient.
Yes. So you organically take in inspiration from the world around you.
Yes.
Excellent. Absolutely excellent.
So, and when you brainstorm, you kind of do it all at once?
Not necessarily. Like, I'm constantly coming up with ideas. It's just, I don't want to call it a backbone necessarily, but I create the makings of a backbone on my brainstorm sheet.
Okay.
Because, like, usually when I sit down to brainstorm, I have no idea. I don't know what it's going to be, and I just let it all come. And then as I...
See, I never sit down with the intention to, like, create something without, the idea first having come to me on accident.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've got, like, too many things I want to make. I don't want to make any new things. But the ideas still come to me by accident, and I'm like, oh, God, that would be great. And I'm like, I stop thinking about it, like, I don't want to make that. I got too much stuff on my plate. And then it'll be in the back of my mind anyway, and I'll get another idea for it, and it'll slowly build itself until I have to make it.
Yes.
But yeah, I never sit down with the, like, let's get to work, let's make something, unless the makings just are already there.
Mm-hmm.
It just seems unnatural to me.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't know. I enjoy taking just the very idea of taking nothing and creating something from nothing as organic. It's like a brainstorm sheet is an organic form of that to me.
I could definitely say it is.
The purest form of creation I could have.
Instead of just, you're still kind of doing the same thing that I am. But instead of drawing on the world around you on a moment-by-moment basis, you're just doing the same thing using your memories.
Mm-hmm.
So it's honestly not that different or weird. So, but just the process in which it's done, like sitting down to, like, let's have an idea. I could not do it if I tried.
Really?
Yeah.
I may teach you someday how I go about it.
I think it's probably just a difference in how our brains are wired, dude.
Fair enough. I had pulled up a bunch of articles before the podcast to get some ideas on what to talk about, and I can't quite find it right here. But one thing the author of the article talks about is, as part of her creative process and what she recommends to other people, is taking an already existing piece of literature and just beat the shit out of it and change so much stuff constantly until it becomes your own thing. Which I'm not sure how to feel about that.
I think that feels a little bit dirty.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not inherently and wholly against it. I say do that as a fun learning project.
Okay, here's what she said. She said, take a book, boil it down to a single paragraph, and then make a simple but profound change. And you probably have to do it.
That's vague enough. I think that works. Yeah.
It would have to be like several changes, though, wouldn't it? So it's not just like, that's a so and so ripoff.
She says make one profound change, and this is based on a paragraph. So you're probably changing the most vital thing about that paragraph, and that'll carry you probably in a whole new direction, I imagine.
Yeah.
Why don't we try it right now?
Right now?
Yeah, pull a book down off your shelf and give me a paragraph.
I'm like desperately looking around. Uh, let's do the Call of Cthulhu from memory. So
I haven't read it, but I guess you can tell me.
I'm trying to remember. This is going to be so bad because I haven't read it in a hot minute.
You know what? Let me grab a book.
Okay.
And I'll just flip to a random page. Intermission. Okay. I just picked a random book off my shelf.
Yes.
And it is Rose Madder by Stephen King.
Okay. Boil it down to a paragraph.
Okay, I'm just flipping until I find kind of a short one. Oh my god. Stephen King has a lot of run-on paragraphs in this book.
Something I don't like about Stephen King is his overuse of subplots. But I think I'll get to that in a second.
Okay. So, here's a random paragraph. I'll read it for you now.
Mm-hmm.
His unaffected, undisgusted delight only made it worse. All of a sudden it felt as if someone were twisting a knife in her guts. "I can't go out with you on Saturday," she said, speaking rapidly. The tears were coming faster now, oozing from beneath her eyelids like some nasty hot grease. "I can't go out with you at all. I was crazy to think I could."
Okay, let's take the man and the woman and both put them in that power dynamic. But instead, let's put the woman on a torture rack. And let's say the man is a member of the Inquisition and she's been falsely accused of witchcraft and she's begging for her life. And let's make the story about what would be the main story? Like, it is obviously about witch hunts, but maybe
Right.
What's a moral? Personal salvation.
Right. And
Finding
you could
your
explore
own-
that through inner monologue during
Torture, yes.
Torture.
Where she rationalizes her position and she finds inner peace and salvation through her own, I guess, dogmatic beliefs that are already in place.
Well,
And her own take on Christianity, even though she is falsely accused. Hey, I did it.
wow, you really did it. So I'll just summarize Rose Madder, even though I've not read the entire book. The premise is, a very anxious woman escaping and running away from her abusive husband. So that is a very different setup. So I would say this exercise actually works pretty well.
Yeah, I think it can be done. Like, when I first read the article, skimmed the article.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, article. I'm sorry, author, if you heard this. When I originally skimmed the article, I thought, there's no way.
Yeah.
But I guess she was onto something, and I owe her an apology.
What's
I
her
am
name?
sorry.
Make a public apology, you asshole.
Oh, Lord. Oh, Lord.
Oh, you don't have the article right now, do you?
Valante. I'm sorry. You were correct, and I was wrong.
Rest in pepperonis, said Dalen.
Yeah. Fuck it,
So
I'll send you the article for later.
Yeah, I'll read through it.
Alright, so,
That was an interesting experience.
yeah, I think it was a really fun exercise.
Went along a lot faster than I thought it would.
Mm-hmm.
You just jumped right on that.
Would you like to... I'll summarize all of Call of Cthulhu in a paragraph if you want to see if you can do it.
Well, that defeats the purpose of the exercise, doesn't it? To take a single paragraph, right, and then change something about it.
Oh, I thought
that way it's random. Oh, she said boil it down to one. I just picked one at random.
Yeah, she boiled it down to one.
All right, let's try that then.
Okay, so a scientist, or let's say a researcher, comes across an artist who's having terrible nightmares about a dreamy city, a dark and horrible place underwater, and hears two words, and one of them is Cthulhu. The researcher panics because he knew the name, because he had once looked into a cult that worshipped Cthulhu. The researcher goes mad, interviewing different people with nightmares, until eventually discovering that only creative people are attacked with the Cthulhu madness when they sleep. Later on, the researcher dies, and the papers of the research goes down to his nephew.
Okay.
And his nephew continues the research and discovers a sailor who had came across the city when it was
This
above
paragraph
water.
is too long.
I'm summarizing the story, damn you.
I think this is too specific.
Oh,
to
is
work with. I think so.
I'm my bad. Okay, fuck it. I don't have a paragraph at hand. Ooh, use the one I did on the Hydra.
Oh, okay. Well, damn. Okay, so that's so a young heroine goes to fight a Hydra that's been terrorizing a village, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the Hydra becomes less aggressive the more heads it has.
Yeah, it.
Or the heads are weaker than they
Mm-hmm.
initially were.
Yes.
Okay. So you're gonna embarrass me. I'm not. Now I'm blanking. Now I'm on the spot.
That's okay. You don't have to do it.
Your creative process is like, ooh, let's make an idea, and like I gotta see a fruit basket before I can make a story.
Fair enough. Everybody's different, and that's okay.
The Hydra is a dog,
Mm-hmm.
and instead of but dogs don't come back to life when they die.
They can, if
But
you're
this one
writing horror.
does. And instead of becoming less aggressive, it becomes more aggressive every time.
That's
They
excellent.
bury it, and it shows up the next day a little bit more ornery.
Mm-hmm.
And something goes wrong. That sounds like a good pulpy horror. Okay, there you go. Write that one, Dad.
I can't. Stephen King already did with Pet Sematary.
Shit. I haven't read or watched Pet Sematary, so
Oh, they're doing a remake of it.
yeah.
I'll watch it and let you know whether
I
or not
just wanted
watch
to
the
make a
first-
disclaimer that I didn't rip off Pet Sematary.
That's always the worst feeling when you think you created something and
I know, right?
it's the worst.
But it saves me when I can, like, at least in my own mind prove that I didn't actually steal it, because I've never like experienced. Whenever I have like a really good idea but I'm like, did somebody else think of that? I'll look it up. And if
Yeah.
somebody else already wrote it, I won't write it. But I'm like, if I've never heard of that piece of media, so at least I can say that I did actually have the idea.
Yeah. I do that with words, like when I'm putting together fantasy words.
Yeah.
Like right now, I pulled up my brainstorm sheet to use as a reference. I haven't looked any of these up yet, but like Callion, Cleoba, Keoba, and then Marksville, West Virginia.
All the elder gods. Beautiful.
Well, two of those are a place,
Yeah.
and but like Marksville, I actually some thought went into that because most backwoods hick towns in Appalachia are named after a person.
Right.
So fuck Marksville, that makes sense.
It does. So is that a
That's where shit goes down.
fictional town you're trying to create?
I've not looked any of these places up yet.
Right. But that's an idea you had for a fictional place in West Virginia. So you want to find out if it's actually a real place in West Virginia.
I need to do that. It's real. No, Marksville, Virginia is real, not West Virginia.
Well, there you go. You're safe.
Yeah, I mean, if Marksville, West Virginia was real, I was still gonna fuck their world.
Yeah,
I don't actually feel bad about doing that.
that's fine.
Well, it's like what's that movie? The banjo movie.
Oh,
with
you were telling me about it. It's one word. It's a one-word
It
title.
is. I'm gonna have to quickly Google that. Keep talking so I don't have to edit out the audio. But anyway,
banjos.
oh god, there's actually Deliverance. So Deliverance, although that is a horrible story with terrible pacing, with no morals, that relies wholly on shock value, what it did was it actually brought tourism to that area. People went and rode the rapids and,
Yeah.
canoe and kayak that river, which is a good thing. I spent money in the
Yeah.
town
Well,
based off some trashy novel.
Yeah,
Which
that's kind of like that town in Pennsylvania that nobody's allowed to live in. That was Silent Hill was based on.
mm-hmm.
Which I guess it's not as much of a good thing because there's no local economy to bring people to. But yeah, it made the same kind of effect. People, excuse me, do go there just to see how covered in smoke this town is.
Well, it affects economies around the town.
That's true.
So yeah, that's neat. I'm trying to think of a really good interview question for you.
Sure, that would be better because I'm grasping for things to like talk about. So ask me questions, and that would move us along.
When does the Senguin Citadel come out?
Probably in a few years.
So that'll probably make it 10 years.
That will probably make it 10 years that I've been fully working on it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's usually how it goes, though.
Yeah.
It's all the details are pretty much ironed out, and I'm taking my time with this manuscript, and I'm gonna say it's probably gonna be at least a year or two before like I've got most of the book done, because this is my third time writing the manuscript, and the first two sucked because I was young when I wrote them.
Mm-hmm.
But the base ideas were so good that I wanted to come back to them. And let me tell you, rewriting a book is the worst. Rewriting anything, recreating something you've created is probably one of your worst ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And you should just see it through to the end and then make something totally new next time.
Yes.
But that's not what I did. I decided to remake it. And I've decided that I'm going to take my time to make it how I actually want it to be, so that I won't be so disappointed that I want to scrap it or redo it ever again. This is going to be the definitive version, one way or another.
You would probably benefit from a fluctuating outline.
Fluctuate.
Just like
in what way?
Like outline the story, and then just constantly change the outline until the outline's like solidified.
It's mostly solidified at this point. The outline is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
especially the
before
first
you-
half.
Mhm.
The book is split into two parts, and the first part is pretty much outlined,
Yes.
and it's just about like giving things names and like, you know what? As for that, it's honestly just about writing it at this point.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm hesitant to do that until I have the second half more concisely outlined,
Mm-hmm.
because it's good to put in foreshadowing, and that's hard to do if you're not fully aware of what's going to come later. I could always go back and edit in a foreshadowing moment before going to publishing, but
Mm-hmm.
I would rather know fully where I'm going.
Yeah.
I've even got the entire series outlined. I tried my hardest to boil it down to 5 books, but by God, I could not make it less than 7, no matter how hard I tried, and tell the same story that I wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Um.
I'll be old and gray by the time it's done, I'm sure. But
Yeah.
I know where the series is generally fully going. So all I have to do is concisely outline the first book, and I can actually start on that.
Mm-hmm.
So I have been working on it. It probably feels like I haven't. I have been working on this.
Mm-hmm.
Fuck. Next question.
I want to touch on that very quickly.
Sure.
So,
We can talk about that lore a little bit. I just don't want to give away spoilers is all.
so myself, I'm doing albums, allegedly doing albums based on that lore as well.
Right.
And what I'm
Well,
going to do,
it's not really. I just want to say that it's not based on the lore of my books. The lore of my books and the lore of your albums are both based on a more collective, you could say, wholly different thing that we did together in high school.
like, we jump off each other's stuff. Like,
Yeah, we do.
the writers. That was me.
Yeah. You had that idea, and I think I really took it and made it my own. But it's definitely part of the same lore.
Mm-hmm. So it's not completely different.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm doing is for the realms D, A, E, the second E, and S,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to do an album on. I'm skipping the top and the bottom.
Yeah.
And for Earth, I'm going to do an acoustic record and call it Powerless.
Whoa.
And then just have
I thought you
a
hated
picture of me.
acoustic.
I do, but I think it would be perfect way to end it.
Okay.
So it's like you got all these crazy psychedelic heavy records, and then finally an acoustic record that says, "Hey."
I guess
the
you could
magic's
say
gone
that the
now.
last one is a little bit more down to earth.
You're funny.
He.
Which I guess goes back to what you were saying of knowing where the series is going to end beforehand.
Right.
So, which is interesting because with and I'll talk about it as much as I can, but there's this I guess a plot I've been working on for a long time called Bulletproof, and I know the beginning to the middle and the ending, and that third fourth, I have no idea.
Yeah.
It's been 5-6 years of writer's block, and I have no idea how to get it from the midpoint of the story to the end.
Well, that sucks, dude.
Yeah.
But that's exactly like my process, and you can see why it's so time consuming, because it's just you make those points, the beginning, ending, and some centralized points in the middle, the big moments, and then it's all fluffing in the empty space.
Mm-hmm.
And that is fucking hard to do.
I may sit down and scrap it almost completely,
Mm-hmm.
and because there's like a bunch of details I want to change. So initially, like I created the plot back in high school.
Yeah,
Before this big boom of post-apocalypse stuff was in the media, and I'm like,
Yeah.
and I had done it as post-nuclear apocalypse, and I'm like, that sucks, that's stupid, I'm not doing that. Instead, I'm gonna go for more of a Blade Runner future,
Okay. where
where it's the future, the world didn't end, it just sucks, you know?
So more of a dystopia than a post-apocalypse.
Yeah, it's gonna be I'm gonna change it to dystopian.
Okay.
Have you seen Blade Runner?
I have not, but I know about the aesthetic.
Yeah, those are both excellent movies.
Okay.
Like, they're, oh my god, I wish I could talk about it.
We'll put them on the
It's-
ClapTrap movie list.
It's based off a novel called Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? And I need to get it.
Huh.
But
That
it's
sounds
so
pretty
good.
good.
It's ooh. I get excited when I talk about Blade Runner.
Okay. We'll talk about Bulletproof for now, though.
Yeah, sorry. But like I want to take the main character and put him in a dystopian future instead of an apocalyptic future, cuz I'm sick of that.
Yeah, that makes me more interested in the story already, because I too am sick of post-apocalypse.
Which invites things like world building and politics. And,
Right.
Which I had talked to you about that before, didn't I?
I'm not sure.
Politics and socioeconomic things.
Yeah,
worker
because
unions, all
I
that.
was looking to do short stories in the lore of my greater, in the lore of my main book series. I want to do short stories set in that world to further expound on it.
Yes.
And yeah, you brought up like explore the politics of those worlds, and I was like, cool. That just happened the other day though, and I haven't had too much time to think about it, but it's a good idea.
Yeah, like I can't remember. You know that YouTuber I showed you a while back that did the I can't say this out loud. The Seth and Tech, I think his name is. Who did the Alona video? I'll send him to you.
Yeah, I remember.
He when he does his parodies, what he does is he approaches the plot from a socio-political standpoint,
Okay.
talking about workers' unions and racism and xenophobia and the guilds and all that,
Cool.
without actually talking about the plot itself.
Right.
And I'm thinking to myself, that's such a cool way to explore a fantasy setting.
Right. We need more
Like-
fantasies that's not about the world ending, and that is just about
The
John
people.
John the stonemason, trying to get a nut.
Yeah, like migrant workers trying to fit in with the dwarves who hate them, and there's a
Right.
like I remember in one of them he talked about a mages guild that you have to be an unpaid intern for many years before you get to learn the high magics, and
That's genius. Yeah,
I'll,
I had
I'll have to.
That reminds me, I recently got like invited into a writer's circle.
Uh huh.
So that's like a group email thread where there are a few writers. I only know one of them. He was like, "You want in on this?" Because I gave him some like feedback on something he had written, and he's like, "You want to come to my writer's circle, or you want to be a part of my writer's circle?" And I was like, "That sounds awesome." But yeah, that's
Networking.
cool. So that's given me more reason to write. So that's why I'm on it. So much right now. But a short story from that somebody had written. It was my buddy, and he did a short story first. Like he wants to write a book, and he's like, okay, I'm gonna do a 10,000 word short story to prove to myself that I can buckle down and do a lot of writing.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but he writes fantasy.
Yes.
And so he wrote this 10,000 word short story, which sounds like a lot of words, but it ended up being like 30 pages.
Mm-hmm.
30, 31. It was about 30. And because it was a fantasy story, it had a setup, it had all the fantasy trappings, and it had like a big, like a climactic ending. And I'm like, not all fantasy stories have to like be like about an ancient evil and like the world is at stake, especially
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I get that you wanted to write a short story. I was like, this moved way too fast was one of my criticisms of it. And I was like, of course you wanted it to be a short story, but maybe fantasy epic is not
Mm-hmm.
short story material. So but you can still have fantasy short stories, you can have fantasy whatever. But the point I was trying to make with that is the fact that not all fantasy stories have to put the world at stake. You can explore more minute facets of the world, and I would thank you for it.
Yeah, like I would like to see a good story, just a straight like what's a good genre that's just quaint. God,
Romantic comedy.
a romantic comedy that just so happened to be set in a high fantasy universe.
Yes. Yeah,
Fuck
that's
it, why
awesome.
not?
Why not a romantic comedy set in a low fantasy universe?
It doesn't matter. It's like any sort of genre. It just the world happens to be like, fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
Why does it? And I think there's so many tropes connected to these genres that.
Right. Well, I think that specifically in fantasy just comes from old stories,
Mm-hmm.
because fantasy is based on myth that was made
Damn
back in the
Greeks.
days. Yeah. And, all of myth has to be monumental. So,
Mm-hmm.
but you know what I'd like to see in a fantasy setting? Like a business owner in a city, like competing with other local business owners, talking about economics.
Yeah, yeah,
That would be
yeah.
fucking dope. Maybe
Yeah,
I'll
it
make
would
that one of
be.
my short stories.
Fucking that YouTube channel I sent you. Like, watch some of his like fantasy video game reviews.
Yeah, I could probably
There's
gather some inspiration just off bullshit he says as a joke.
Yeah, like I've been doing that.
Yeah.
And like just the thought of, well, why wouldn't migrant workers be in a high fantasy world?
Right, right.
Like, why wouldn't there be xenophobia or racism or
Why wouldn't humans have
socioeconomics?
enslaved goblins at this point?
Yeah, exactly. Like it makes sense in those worlds.
Yeah.
And I think he's an edgy comedian who's not being serious, but he's fucking onto something, you know? He's onto something.
Let's
that we
milk
just
this cow for all it's worth.
I'm not. I write horror.
You write fantasy too, though. Not so much in your writing. You write fantasy lore for your music.
Mm-hmm. I do fantasy world
So
building,
that
but I don't
still
write
makes
fantasy.
you kind of a fantasy writer.
Mm-hmm.
So, there you go, asshole.
I'm not writing songs about socioeconomic issues.
All right,
And
I'll do it then.
just dress up as an elf and do protest songs about things that people don't even begin to comprehend because they have no like context. Oh my god, that would be beautiful.
There you go. Just stand out on the street, like with an acoustic guitar, dressed fully as an elf. Like with a sign around your neck that says fairies are fae too, because the fairies are being oppressed by the elves. Sing a song about that.
That would be pretty fucking good. Huh. It makes me want to write high fantasy, but I know I don't want to.
You wouldn't be too bad at it, I don't think.
So, my next question, emotion. What all, like, when you evoke emotion, what's your favorite emotions to evoke?
Huh. That's hard to say. Probably. I don't know. This might be weird. Maybe hopelessness.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of my writing is just. I've written a lot of things to cope with like feelings of hopelessness, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not even like what I want to represent fully in my life, because like I'm all about like perseverance and like pushing through. So maybe I write about the feeling of being hopeless to overcome that feeling in a way.
Yeah.
I'm writing a story right now that's all about like it's kind of like it's in a low fantasy setting, and it's kind of like about, you know, coming to terms with reality. Mm-hmm. So I've got this hero who's like gonna slay a dragon, right? But he's not even the main character. The main character is this other guy who's completely unrelated, and like you're seeing like the hero's quest to slay the dragon through the eyes of this other like older gruff dude who's just like happens to be in the same place, who is like a monster hunter, and he's like, you know, real with the world, and like a lot of bad things happen, and the hero just dies because he was foolish.
Yeah.
And there is a happy ending. It's not so much a happy ending, but it's a good ending, and in a realistic way. And it's kind of like, you know, put aside your ideals and like look at what's going on.
Mm-hmm. That's really cool.
Thank you.
Kind
of just taking the piss out of, you know, fantasy heroes.
It feels almost like satire. Not satire.
It is in a way.
Yeah.
Not, you know, to do a proper satire, I'd have to write it, you know, as a proper, from the point of view of the hero kind of thing, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I guess the Holy Grail would be a good satire of fantasy.
I love it.
Huh. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Do you, any other emotions like, anxiety? Do you play with anxiety when you write high fantasy?
Yeah. Anxiety, panic. Like, and I kind of control that with like a lot of things, really, with pacing. Mm-hmm. Because, you know, I don't know exactly how I do it, like, or, you know, what I do to like make it feel frantic. Like there's a lot going on, but like the way you break up sentences and form your paragraphs, stack them on top of one another, makes it feel frantic. But like, it's so much writing, obviously, because your mind is racing. It takes a long time, you know. Mm-hmm. And I feel like a lot of that's just like how the reader intakes it. With something like film, it's paced the way it's paced, and you see it happen at the speed it happens. But a reader reads at their own pace, and you kind of push them to read faster or slower based on what's happening and how you structure your paragraphs. Mm-hmm. And so when I'm, you know, when something's going on, when there's a situation and like the main character is frantically trying to do something, that can drag on for pages, when in reality it was only a few seconds.
Yes.
But the reader still understands it as a few seconds, and I think that's awesome. That's something I like to do.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. Do you ever fuck with romance? You ever fuck with love stories?
Yeah.
Do you?
I mean, I have romantic subplots, but they're not my thing, primarily.
I don't like them.
They usually don't end well in my writings.
Mm-hmm.
Or, okay, I'll tell you, I have this one story that probably won't see the light of day for many years, so I'll talk about it. And it's the main character has a love interest from the beginning, right? And she is completely disinterested in him. And actually is in love with his older brother. And so, but it goes on. It's very idealistic fantasy kind of shonen anime in that way. There's that's the love interest. That's who the main character is going to end up with, right? And that's who he's going to pursue the whole time. And eventually she'll come around and she'll see that he's the cool guy as he goes on this quest and grows to become a cool hero, right? Mm-hmm. But as he grows to become a cool hero, that, he has some introspection and is like, oh, my obsession with this girl is childish and uninformed, and she's never going to reciprocate. Yeah. And he gives up on that, and that helps him notice another girl who's actually been, supporting him the whole time and actually interested in him. And after he has that moment, that's when they start bonding, and they actually end up together and live happily ever after in the end. So, I can't have just a romantic subplot that's boy meets girl, they like each other, they live happily ever after. That's boring. There's got to be pain along the way.
Mm-hmm. I don't touch them.
You don't like romance, Zed?
I'm not good at it.
Who is?
I remember the closest I've ever been to romance is in Bulletproof. Mm-hmm. Michael's sister kills the military, or not kills, but tries to kiss the military officer.
Very different.
I have no idea where to take that. So the military officer goes, I just don't like girls. I'm sorry. And it gets really awkward.
Wait, you literally made a character gay so you didn't have to write a couple being together.
Yeah, and I was writing on pen and paper, so I couldn't backtrack.
That's fucked up, dude. That's just mad fucked up.
Not necessarily.
It's kind of
I would make the argument that you're representing homosexuality in a way that doesn't concentrate on homosexuality. It just
I would make the argument that you're using homosexuality as a crutch.
I was 14. Leave me alone.
All right. Well, I want you to understand that that's bad. Don't do it again. Explore romance, Ed. Hell, if that's something you struggle... Well, I guess it doesn't, come up too much in the horror fantasy. So, you know what? Here, write about a perfect romance and then tear it apart in one of your horror stories.
Blah.
Blah.
Just blah.
Doesn't that sound horrific?
Writing romance is horrific and it's so hammy. Which,
Let me tell you something, son.
Mm-hmm.
You suck. And you're never going to grow if you don't push yourself to write about the things that you don't like.
That's true. I should probably explore and then have the woman at the end turned into some sort of ghastly abomination and then fucking slowly eat the man from his toes up while he's paralyzed. I don't know, something like that.
Yeah.
So, I want to pitch an idea to you.
Sure.
And it'll flow nicely with the podcast. So, I was sitting there thinking the other day, how funny would it be if we did we'd have to do it just so.
Wait, we did a what? You cut out.
We do a Valentine's special, and we discuss romantic subplots in literature and film.
Okay.
And it's just this completely normal intellectual debate. But before the podcast, a big bassy voice goes, and this one's for the ladies.
This one's... Oh.
And there's a 70s porno soundtrack going on in the background during this serious intellectual debate.
I'm fully on board with that idea.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, because I was thinking to myself, it'll either be the funniest thing in the world or the cringiest thing in the world.
It'll be both.
All right, excellent.
It will simultaneously be both.
Okay, so
Let me
if
tell you
look,
an idea I had that's too late to do, but maybe in 2 years if we're still doing this.
yeah,
So it's election time, right?
yeah,
The midterm elections are coming up, and before you get scared, I'm not going to talk about politics. But I thought it would be hilarious if we started running campaign smear ads against each other on the channel. And like, if we had a viewer base at all, like let them vote for president of ClapTrap or something.
yes.
And just like make it a month-long thing where we just like campaign against each other.
Mm-hmm.
And I was gonna make a smear ad like like fucking Zed Dalen wants to fuck your dad. Are you gonna vote for the guy who's gonna fuck your dad? Don't. This message is sponsored by the committee to elect Trent Caldwell.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah.
Ooh, you just last name dropped.
Whatever. No, that's
Okay.
fine.
Okay.
My name is Trenton Caldwell. Find me.
I'm Zed Dalen. But Google me. Listen to my music, please, for the love of God.
I'm pretty
See,
sure you've
I'm-
got your real name linked to one of your music accounts.
I scrubbed that as the best I could.
Well,
I
okay.
think that's all gone.
All right.
So, back to creative writing, and constructing a plot.
Yeah.
Is there more to talk about? Do you want to talk about more?
If you've got more to ask me, my ideas have to come organically, Zed.
Yeah.
So give me some organisms.
So, are you gonna do the novel in November thing? Because I'm pretty held.
I'm doing a short story in November. Yeah, I'm gonna finish that short story I was telling you about with the Dragon Slayer.
Okay. I'll probably do a short story as well. I don't know
Yeah.
if I'll reach novella point, but
I'll go ahead and spoil the story if you want, just to expound on it more. So like
sure, I'll do the same.
yeah, so my short story, like I said, it's about facing realism and taking the piss out of a classic fantasy story. So the setup from the beginning, like you're kind of cued in to like feel down to earth because you're seeing it from the point of view of a guy who is down to earth.
Mm-hmm.
But like you understand that it's like it means something else to the hero, the quote unquote hero, and the other people around, some of the other people around, because the premise is this: it's like in a kingdom like in the far north of Eldor, is like there's two counties on two peninsulas that are like feuding with each other, and that's just background. That doesn't have anything to do with the story. But one of them, there's an island in between where the king of like both of those counties used to live, and like he died and there was contention over the land, and they both split off to the peninsulas and like have been at war for hundreds of years. Not war, but just like kind of a stalemate, and they don't like each other. But a dragon has set up on that old isle, and it came during a tourney and kidnapped one of the lord's daughters. And it's a green dragon. It came and kidnapped the lord's daughter, and here comes the hero to slay the dragon and bring her home. But actually, it's from the point of view of this monster hunter who comes to town looking for work, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you know he's in this the whole time. He's like, I like dragons aren't real. It ate her. You know, and he goes out there, and it's a wyvern instead of a dragon. It's just like an unintelligent monster, and he finds like the remains of the princess, like charred bones and like some scraps of a dress, and it's and then he gets his payment and he goes home.
So you're like you are taking the piss out of a very
Right,
traditional
I'm
story.
making like it sound like on a fundamental level as much like a simple high fantasy story as I possibly can, and like completely generic. Generic is the word I'm looking for, and then just like making it like actually this is real. You know,
Mm-hmm.
this is what would have happened in such a situation. If a world like this did exist, here's how that would go.
That would be pretty cool.
Yeah, no, it will be pretty cool because that's the story I'm writing for November, and I'll have it done by the time December rolls around, and I'll let you read it.
Same.
It's called The Dragon of Old King Isle. Be on the lookout.
Okay,
So why don't you? Do you want to spoil your story?
Okay, so my story hasn't been named yet,
Mm-hmm.
but are you familiar with the real person John Dee?
I'm not sure that I am.
So way back in history, there was an occultist named John Dee, who this is during the times of like Nostradamus and Sir Isaac Newton and stuff. And what he was doing was trying to reach out into the beyond to study the occult. And what he did was he supposedly contact angelic forces, and was able to write down the writings or the language. That's the word, language of angels, called
my God.
Enochian. And you
It's
can
called what
purchase
now?
Enochian. So you
Enochian.
can, yeah. So you can purchase his writings and look it up. It's Dee, John Dee. So what I'm
Okay.
doing is I'm saying in my story, Earth is an entire like magical simulation, right?
All right.
And that there's an overlord, sort of like just a researcher named Tleoba, that's sitting down looking at this simulation, trying to gather data because he created us. And he puts forth these energy discharges that are sentient, called Kallions. And what they do, these names are probably going to get changed. They go in and they fuck with our subconscious, what we're doing, and all that. So they basically implant ideas
Okay.
and inspire us to do certain things, like good, evil, and all of that. They they backfire scientific experiments. They inspire religions. They inspire cults, and all of that. They're basically the muses from history
Oh.
that latch onto these prophets and inspire them, and then they cause just general mischief. So what Cleopa is doing is he's sending them in and saying, okay, fuck with these humans in this way, or fuck with them in that way, so I can gather data to figure out how an intelligent mind works under these situations,
Okay.
and how these people will act and react, so I can implement that into my own society and better it. Because basically he has this perfect simulation that he can fuck with called Earth. That's the background. So basically it starts with this Jehovah's Witness.
As all good horror stories do.
Who's going to Marksville, West Virginia to do some missionary work amongst Pentecostals.
Okay.
And so you can with Pentecostals, for the listeners, this is the Spirit of God type religion, and they're hooping and hollering, they speak in tongues, and they handle snakes, and I'm thinking to myself,
Hey, okay, I went to a Pentecostal church. Not all of them handle snakes. I think that's
this
kind
one
of a
does.
subgenre of Pentecostal.
This one does.
Okay.
And I'm thinking to myself, what a perfect sect to implement the idea of the Salions. I don't know, I'm working on the details. And underneath the church, underneath the temple, there's this another secret temple of cultists that worship the Kallions like gods, because they discovered them and are doing their biddings with the churchgoers in order to further the master programmer's desires to Leoba.
Okay.
And it's going to be existential horror, and I'm going to put the Jehovah's Witness in some terrible situation, and I have no idea how it's going to end yet, but that's just off my brainstorm sheet.
It sounds like you're kind of doing the same thing I'm doing with my dragon story.
Mm-hmm.
And you're taking the piss out of creationism, sort of, by calling it a simulation. And
Yes.
you're taking the piss out of the muses and spirits by just making them like part of this simulation. Like you're kind of downplaying the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
And like rewriting it as something more logical.
Mm-hmm.
So that's sort of along the same lines. And as creator of the thing that I talked about 5 minutes ago, I approve.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
It's just, I don't know how I'm going to turn that into horror.
I'm sure it won't be too hard.
No, it really won't.
All you have to do, you have to make the threat humans instead of something otherworldly, because by making otherworldly forces so logical, you take the fear out of them. So make the killers like crazed zealots in the church.
Yeah. Well, it's like Lovecraftian.
Yeah.
You don't actually see Cthulhu, but by God, you see his worshippers.
Oh, okay. So you're not gonna like explain this in like super clear terms.
So
right.
with Lovecraftian horror,
Well, you
it's
just
all about,
did. So everybody who reads
Yeah.
it is spoiled. So.
So with Lovecraftian horror, it's all about the suspension of disbelief.
Right.
So you don't actually see it, but you like the idea of it is just horrible, and it's
Right.
you know, it's just the idea that's scary. So that's probably what
Because
I'm
it's
gonna do with
unknown. That's what makes it scary in cosmic horror.
it. Yeah. So it's like this short story is gonna have a lot going for it. There's no real direction. I still have to sit down and do the plot points, but draw out the outline. But
Right.
as far as the brainstorm sheet goes, I'm about done with it.
Awesome. Can't wait to see what you come up with. Is that what you're doing for National Novel Writing Month?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Thank
Okay, we'll swap notes at the end of November.
Yeah, I'll probably have a really shitty. Okay, so back to the topic of the podcast. Part of my creative process is writing it through, and the rough draft will be the shittiest rough draft in the world.
Uh-huh.
And then going back and trying to make it sound like I have a degree, which I will in December. Yeah, my bad.
Rip.
So, what's another question I can ask Trent? Call in today, 555-3478, for your questions for Trent.
Yeah. Operators are
God,
standing by.
Look, I don't even know what to ask you now. What's something you want to ask me?
How's your day going?
I've had a very peaceful weekend.
That's
Lots of
good.
sleep.
That's good.
Got most everything done. I still want to do some homework tonight, but
Hmm.
other than that, I'm feeling great.
Okay.
How's your weekend?
It's alright.
It's alright.
It's a little busy, but I get to see my family. That's nice.
That's always nice.
Yeah. Would you ever consider branching out into other genres to challenge yourself?
With horror, I'm comfortable and it excites me, and I'm constantly creating with it.
I'll tell you what. I write fantasy,
Mhm.
and to challenge myself, I have written horror. So I think now you need to write fantasy.
Yeah, I guess I could. I mean, it would be pretty easy. I already have some of the world.
It's something you understand like really
Mhm.
well. Even take something from our mutual lore and set it in one of those worlds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could do that. Yeah, that would be really easy, actually.
Yeah, and I think it would help you broaden your horizons a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Here's an
So-
idea: fantasy
okay.
horror.
Yeah, playing
Could
off
you
what
do
I
it?
talked.
Yeah.
Sure.
Like, what would be... I think I've talked about how horror doesn't work super well in fantasy settings because, like, it's hard to relate to a fantasy world. So you can't be scared by it because it doesn't feel like it's in the same, neck of the woods as you are. So what would be your ideas for... what would be your countermeasure to that problem to make something scary happen in a fantasy setting and truly
The fantasy
terrify your audience?
the fantasy setting would have to be coincidental and unimportant to the story, and I would have
It
to.
it does provide a problem though, yeah. So you gotta think about it. So
You're cutting out really bad.
oh well, just monologue then.
I guess what I would do a generic high fantasy story, and I would take just the most unimportant, uninteresting character in the world, but make them relatable. Give them everyday struggles, everyday lives, and I would tell it from the first person perspective. And in horror, writing from the first person perspective is really good because you get a a look inside their mind and their descent into madness. So let's say, I don't know, a fucking a dwarf, no, a gnome, because they're smaller in stature, and I would have them go about their day-to-day lives and somehow place them in a situation where they feel trapped even.
Mm-hmm.
Trapped. That's interesting. So what would trap them? Maybe a wizard's trapped them, and they're
Okay.
inside of like maybe ice, and they're looking down, and they're sort of in like a comatose state where they can't do anything but think, but they understand that they're trapped in ice. And let's open their eyes. Let's keep their eyes open. And they're unable to age, but for years they just slowly go mad. And they
Fixate on things they catch glimpses of, maybe.
maybe, yeah, yeah. And just this the knowledge of always wanting to move and wanting to scream and wanting to just run away, but they can't.
Yeah.
And then eventually, after they go mad, ooh, I could do things like have adventurers come in and like fight the wizard, and then kill the wizard. And the wizard's the only person that could break the spell, but the wizard's dead now. And the adventurers just look at the gnome and be like, "Hey, look, a frozen dead gnome," and just like push him down the side. And then they have to watch the ice slowly melt as they tumble off the side of a mountain. And eventually, when the ice melts, their body dies from shock.
Whoa.
That's just off the top of my head.
Why not have it survive and take revenge on the adventurers?
Because it's horror.
Okay.
It's not supposed to have a happy ending.
I don't. Would that be considered a happy ending? It goes mad and kills people?
Well, I think the focus of the well, no, it
You think
wouldn't be a happy ending.
The
'Cause
surrogate for the reader needs to be the one suffering. Is that what you're saying?
yeah, like the surrogate for the reader has to be the one that dies, because like the second the ice melts and they realize that they can stand up and be free is the moment they die. Just that,
Yeah.
just in just a few seconds, it's I'm finally free. I could finally live. Done. Dead.
Damn.
Yeah.
That's heavy.
That's how I would do it. I would explore madness.
All right, do it.
No. Not in a fantasy set. Well, I mean, I guess I did kind of just put together a plot.
You kind of just outlined an entire short story.
Yeah, that's my brainstorming process.
It's very fast,
yeah.
and it yields impressive results despite that. I'm a little
Thank you.
envious.
Oh, no, don't be. You're a much better wordsmith than I am.
Well, maybe my prose is, but
That took a lot out of me mentally.
well, do you want to call it then?
I guess I could call it.
Yeah.
So, it's the end of the show. Trent, do you think we've said all there is to say about crafting a plot and all that?
I don't think that we've said all there is to say. Perhaps we've exhausted ourselves for today, but this is definitely something we could revisit many times,
Yeah.
I think.
Just a part 2, or maybe a more detailed facet of plot building.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, of course. That's cool.
That's cool.
Story time. You tell the story.
Oh, you want me to tell the That's Cool story?
Tell the That's Cool story, just for fun.
So, a couple of weekends, Zed and his spouse were at my house.
Yes.
Didn't mean to rhyme that, but hey. Because we went to the Renaissance Fair together. And so, my fiance went down there and picked you guys up ahead of time so that you could come up here the day before, because I worked late. I get home in the middle of the night. And I didn't want to have to drive down there and then drive all the way back up to get you guys. Or drive down there to get you guys and then drive back up here and then drive even farther to Renaissance Fair all in one day. So she went and picked you up during the day while I was working. And then I came home in the middle of the night. Zed was passed out on my couch, as he does often. And so, I came in real quiet because I knew people would be sleeping. And you know. But when I put my keys in the bowl by the door, that's what woke him up. Or at least I thought it woke him up, because he doesn't remember this.
I don't.
But he jumps up on one elbow and looks over at me from the couch, putting my keys away, and I just stand there real still. And we stare at each other, making direct eye contact for a good 7 seconds.
Uh-huh.
And then you slowly start nodding at me. You nod like, yeah, that makes sense. And start laying back down, cross your arms as you settle back down. You just cross your arms, close your eyes, and lay on your back, and you're like, that's cool, that's cool, that's cool, that's cool.
Yeah, I'm a sleepwalker and a sleep talker. My subconscious comes out to play at night.
Great. Well, it's been a while since we had a good ClapTrap story time. There you go.
Yeah.
We'll start taking those and maybe putting them up on the channel just as like something to upload, you know? Because we're out of lack for that. So, you were talking a minute ago as we were wrapping this up that you wanted to again explore like a more of a specific facet of narrative structure.
We can.
So it's my turn to pick next week's topic, right?
It is.
It's the moment you've all been waiting for. Next week on the ClapTrap podcast, World Building Part 2.
The sequel?
The
World
sequel.
Building 2?
Yeah.
I'm
Our very
fucking
first
stoked.
episode was on world building, so let's you know what? I'm gonna make an assignment. We both have to go back and listen to the first episode. Yeah, I know that's gonna hurt, but we have to think about it and be like, what did I talk about? You know, so we don't say the same things twice. And what should I have talked about? And come back with new things to say about it. So, you as well, viewer, go watch episode 1 of the ClapTrap podcast, which was on world building, in preparation for next week, World Building the sequel, where we will further expound upon the ideas of world building.
Excellent.
And I think I didn't talk enough about language. That's my favorite thing in world building, as you know. So
Yeah.
I'll explore that.
I guess this will very much be a Trent episode. So
Hey, you're a world builder, man. Come on.
yeah, dude. Yeah. I'm not as into it as you are. I'm not as good at it as you are. I don't have as much of a give a fuck. Like, I'm not gonna write down a language for people.
I think that's true for everything in your life, though. You just don't have as much give a fuck.
I don't have that much of a give a fuck, but I've dined with the mayor of Barberville. You know, it's like, oh.
You make me sick.
All right, I guess I'll take it out. Fucking go out and create something. Think to yourself, what am I passionate about, and do it for you.
Unless you just don't want to.
Fucking just be happy. And listen to Zed's Wednesday Wisdom. Good night.
It's not very good.